My name is Sandeep. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Information Technology of MLR Institute of Technology. So previously we completed the discussions about the control statements. In the control statements, selection statements, loop statements, iteration statements, and each and everything through an example. Today we are going to discuss the next here is functions and the types of functions, built-in functions and user-defined functions. First, what is the function? A function is a block of code that performs a specific task whenever it is called. See, generally, if there is, for example, if you take an application, in that application, we have to perform some task. To perform a task, then we have to represent a block of code. That block of code is called functions. That means a functions is useful to perform a specific task. Functions is used to perform a specific task. And see here, in bigger programs, whenever we have a large amounts of code, it is suggestionable or it is recommended to create or use the existing functions. For example, if I want in ATM application, if you take, so there is I want to deposit, I want to add the money into my account. I want to add the money into my account. Then for every time, for example, simply I will write a statement. So add statement. And like that one, some lines of code. So for example, the user 1 came and user 1 added the amount. At that time, this statement will be executed. These instructions will be executed. Right? So then the amount is deposited. Now the second user came. Whenever the second user came, again we have to write the statements and execute these statements to add the money. Again third person is came for adding the money. Again we have to write the statements and again we have to execute this number of statements. So what will be happen? So that statements at that adding that money is using number of times. So number of times we are going to use that adding money. At that time we are we are going to write every time of adding the money, that is code of that money or amount. So instead of writing that many times, just write that statements in a block of code and define a name by using a function. And define a name by using function. Whenever the user came, whenever the user came and to add the money, simply call this function with that name and then execute that block of code. And again another person. Again, without rewriting that statement, just reuse the code of that function and execute. So in this way, a function is used to perform a task as well as it is also useful to reuse the code. It is also used to reuse the code. So that is about what? Functions. So a function is used to achieve a specific task. To achieve a specific task. So what is the advantage of that function is reusability of the code, or we can reuse the code to perform a task. Anyway, in Python we have the two types of functions. One is built-in function and second one is user-defined function. First we will discuss what is the built-in functions. So these functions are predefined and pre-coded in Python. These functions are predefined. That means whenever you install the Python virtual machine, it will include it and available in the Python library. So that is called built-in functions. If you take an example, min function, max function, len function, sum function, type function, dict function, list function, whatever these functions are there, already we use some of these functions previously. So that is called built-in functions. So which are available in the Python library, that functions are called built-in functions. That functions will included whenever the Python software is downloaded. So that is called built-in functions. So as a user, we can also create that functions. That functions is called user defined functions. That means we can create the functions to perform specific task as per our needs. So that means as a programmer, we can also create the functions. That functions is called user defined functions. Okay. Next, syntax. How can we create the function means by using def keyword. How can we create a function? Using def keyword followed by a function name and then followed by parentheses. In that parentheses, you can include the parameters or not include. That is optional. And then followed by colon. So that is what creating the function. So create a function using the def keyword followed by a function name followed by parentheses, like that one. So for example, def followed by function name parenthesis colon. That is the thing. You can pass any number of parameters in the parenthesis. You may or may not, right? That is based on our requirement. Next, rulings that naming function are similar to the naming of the variables. Yes, already we discussed that how we have to give the variables and how we have to give the naming to the variables. The same rules will be applicable for the function namings, right? So that is the thing. Any statements and other code within the function should be indented. Yes. Once we create the function, then if you want to include the statements, then you compulsory follow that some indentation, like in the control statements. Compulsory you have to follow the indentation. That indentation represent what? A block of code. Anyway, here see, we have that components of a Python function. So a Python function consists of 4 main components. What is the first one here is def keyword and then function name, parameters. Based on the requirement, you can include or may not include. Next, the function body consists of 1 or more indented lines of Python code. Yes, that is the statements, right? So these are the main components of a Python function defining. Next, the def keyword defines a function in Python. Def represents what? It is defining a function, right? It is defining a function and then followed by the name. After then parameters in the parentheses. Compulsory that you have to represent the colon to end the definition, right? So this is what after completion of the function implementation, then if you want to call that function, then you can call that function with the name. So that is the components of a function definition. So how the Python function works? So function definition and function call are the 2 components of a Python function. Yes, function definition means defining a function or creating a function by giving the name, parameters, statements. Function calling means by using with that name we have to call the function, then the statements of the function or then the block of the code will be executed. So that is the Python function working. So first define that function, include that statements with some indentation and then call the function, then it will be execute. Next, how can we call a function means? Yes, we can call a function by using name. For example, if there are parameters are there while defining in the function, then while calling the function, you have to represent or you have to pass the values to that parameters. That means while defining a function, if you are passed to the parameters, if you pass the parameters, then while calling that function, you must and should pass the values to that parameters. So in this way, we can call a function in Python, right? So before going to summary, just let me create a function. See, def function name is m1 parenthesis and then print hello world, right? Hello world, right? And next, so this is the function defining. Then we have to call the function. After completion of that function, So here see, we have that what, some indentation, right? So that is the thing. Now see, execute this one. What happened? Hello 1. Whenever you call that function, then only it will be execute, right? For example, I am going to pass parameters a comma b. So while defining the function, we passed that parameters. We pass the parameters. How many parameters we pass? A and b. Now what will be happen? At the time of function calling, you must and should pass the values to the parameters. You must and should pass the values to the parameters. For example, 10 comma 20.34. Now see, right? Hello, right? So we'll write in different way, that is def sum a comma b. Now write c equals to a plus b, c equals to a plus b, and then print c. Okay, now see, yeah, I'm calling that function 10 comma 30. Okay, now see, right? So it is added that values, that is 10 plus 30, that equals to 40. Here what we did, while defining that function, we pass some parameters. What are the parameters? A and b, that is 2 parameters. Now, and then we added in that statements in the function, right? So, but while calling the function, we had the values to the parameters, that is 10 and 30. So now that 30 value will assign, sorry, the 10 value is assigned to variable a or parameter a, and 30 value is assigned to parameter b, and now both are added, and then result has to assign to c, and then value will be printed by using print function. So here the def is the defining that function, sum is the function name, like that one, right? So this is about what? Function calling, sorry, function defining and function calling. And when the parameters are there, when there are no parameters. This is the thing, right? Now see, finally about that function, any args or input parameter should be placed within these parentheses. That means, so as we discussed, if you want to pass any parameters or arguments, compulsory you have to place within these parentheses only, right? Yes, there is one thing before, whenever you define that function, if you want to represent about that function, that means if you want to represent some description about that function, then use one, that is docstring attribute. The docstring attribute is nothing but what? Documentation string of the function. Documentation string of the function. That means if you want to represent or if you want to give some description about that function, then use this docstring attribute. Docstring means documentation string of the function, right? Next, the code within every function starts with a colon and should be indented. That is important. So you must and should represent the space, which we can say indentation. By default, how many space characters for the indentation means 4 space characters. Already we discussed in the control statements what is the indentations. Next, the statement return exists a function optionally passing back a value to the caller. Yes, we can also use the return statement to the functions. So whenever you apply the return statement to the function, then the value, what? Then the value it's back to the caller of that function. That means that value will be stored into the function. So for example, def m1 a comma b, then return a plus b. Okay, so print, sorry, m1 function 10 comma 20. Now what will be happen here? Here a plus b, so 10 value will be assigned to a and 20 value will be assigned to b. Now 10 plus 20 is what? 30. Now the result will return to this m1 function, that is caller of that function only. That is, that value will be stored in that m1 function. Now what will be happen while calling the function? If you want to get that result while calling the function, you can also do the print, that is m1 of 10 comma 20. Okay, m1 of 10 comma 20. So that is about what? Return statement. Anyway, I will see an example, show you. So def sum a comma b. Now return a plus b. Sorry. Okay. Now see, sum of 10 comma 30. Now by using return statement, we return the value to the function caller. So that's why that result will be assigned into the function only. So that's why while calling the function, what I am doing here, printing that function by using print function, right? Now see what happened, 40. So in this way also the return statement. Actually return statement is one of the jump statements, but here we are discussing about the return statement. Okay, so return statement is used for what purpose? Means just it returns the value to the function caller. So that is about what? Return statement. Okay, so that is about what? Return statement, right? Next, so yeah, this is about what? Functions, defining functions, calling and return statement, and what is the doc string. So these are all the things, and how can we call the function if the parameters are included, and how can we call the function if the parameters is not included within the parenthesis, right? So in next class we'll discuss about what? Types of arguments or types of parameters in the functions. Thank you.